So today I will be talking about social and emotional learning. Um, and here is the first thing that I want to share with you is that loneliness is actually more common than we think. So this is based on a study from the Program for International Student Assessment showing that 16% of the children in the world are feeling lonely. Now, that statistic was very striking to me because when I look at children, and these are secondary school students, 15-year-olds, including Hong Kong students that they were surveying, and that number seemed a lot higher than what I intuitively thought. And during the pandemic, I think that number was even higher. So it has improved somewhat after the pandemic. And the other thing I want to share is that that statistic that I shared, that 16% of children all over the world are feeling lonely, is not just a phenomenon in Hong Kong because this study was conducted all over the world from 71 different countries. And all those countries in blue participated in this survey. So I think one of the things that I wanted to share is that perhaps many of our children, students, or peers are actually suffering from some form of mental health challenges that we might not be aware of. And these are just the percentages of students who feel lonely across countries. There are some countries where loneliness is much higher. So here you see the OECD average, which is around 16%. And if you are interested in the data of Hong Kong, I can show that to you here. So that shows that in Hong Kong, around almost 20% of the students, secondary school students, are actually feeling lonely. And the same goes for Macau, which is what you find here on the right, as well as Taipei, etc. And those things actually show us that soft skills, as Gigi mentioned earlier, is actually very important because soft skills or social emotional skills could help us deal with these challenges and tribulations that we face, stresses that we face in our day-to-day life. Now, that was a snapshot across the globe that I showed. But the other thing that I wanted to share with you all is that loneliness or problems with mental health are not just keeping pace. They are actually increasing over time. And here I wanted to show you a statistic that from year 2000, when they first started surveying school loneliness in this program for international student assessment study, it has actually been increasing a lot all the way to 2018. And if I have the data to show you that uh, right now in 2026, it is even worse. Girls suffer a little bit more than boys. So I think everyone suffers from problems of loneliness, but it seems that girls suffer a little bit more. As you can see from this picture here with the pink bar on top. Now you might ask, is that just a problem in Western countries, or is it just a problem in Hong Kong? And the answer actually is no. This problem of loneliness increasing across the world has been shown in all the world's cultures. So here we map those increasing statistics on loneliness from different world cultures. So you have there Confucian Asia, the red bar, that would include data from Hong Kong, Macau, Taipei, Beijing, Shanghai, Zhejiang, and Jiangsu. You also see that spike in loneliness from English-speaking countries that includes Australia, New Zealand, US, and Canada, as well as Catholic Europe, Spain, France, and Orthodox countries as well. So what you see here is that this seems to be a global problem. It's not just a problem in Hong Kong. We all know that Hong Kong is a very stressful society. Achievement is so highly valued. Students are pressured academically. But what we see when we look at these graph is that actually this is a problem that all of us face. And one of the things that researchers have identified as a potential cause is social media. So if you look at the social media trends, a lot of the younger generation now, including probably many of you here in the audience, grew up with social media. And in social media, I think you realize that that is a fake picture of the reality, but it's a very competitive picture out there that people are pressured to keep up. And that has been one of the causes that they've identified to be able to explain this spike in loneliness. Now, of course, there are many other causes, but I just wanted to surface that overuse and over reliance on social media is one of the things that they've identified as causing this increase in loneliness. Because rather than having face-to-face interactions, face-to-face friendships, we rely on online support. But that is not equivalent to having real friends in the real world. Okay. And so that is where social emotional skills come in. So SEL stands for social emotional learning, and a lot of studies have shown that it's not just good for well-being, as I've shown earlier. It's students with higher social emotional skills, they're better able to deal with loneliness. They have lower levels of depression and anxiety, but it also supports academic achievement, better engagement, and motivation. So if SEL matters, what is SEL? Okay, what are the soft skills that we have been talking about? Now, one thing I wanted to serve is that creativity is actually one of them. So what Teresa has been talking about in terms of creativity is part of social emotional skills. Now, the first framework that I'd like to share with you is this framework from the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning called CASEL. So they identify five types of skills or soft skills as crucial to better social emotional development. So that includes self-awareness, being aware of our emotions, knowing why we feel angry, for example, and why we feel sad, knowing our strengths and our weaknesses, knowing our values, that is self-awareness. The other thing is self-management, which means managing our emotions and behavior. So we're not just surrendering to our stress or our emotions, but we're able to manage and control them. The third thing is social awareness, which means being able to show understanding and empathy to others. And then you have relationship skills. And lastly, the most important that tries to consolidate all these things would be responsible decision making, which means we're able to make constructive, ethical choices based on um, based on the common good. Now, the other framework that I'd like to share, now there's so many, there actually, Harvard actually has this study where they show that there are more than 100 frameworks for soft skills or social emotional skills. But I just wanted to show two of the frameworks. So the first one I showed you was this CASEL framework, Collaborative for Academic, Social, Emotional Learning. The other one that I'd like to share with you is this Big Five framework. So here it shows that social emotional skills could be summarized into five key domains. So let's look at them one by one. The first type of social emotional skill deals with emotion regulation, which is on the upper right hand of the picture here. So that includes our ability to resist stress because stress is unavoidable. All of us will have stress, whether you're a student, a teacher, a social worker, a psychologist, all of us will suffer from stress, and being able to resist that control and as well as being resilient in the face of stress is very important. Being optimistic is there as well as emotional control, which means that we are not just surrendering to our emotions, but we're able to manage them. The second type of skill would be collaboration skills. So that includes skills of empathy, being able to understand why others feel the way they feel, why others think the way they think, trust, and cooperation. So I think a lot of you here are organized in teams and groups. So collaboration skills are extremely important because a lot of the work, the good work that happens, including this forum that we have today, is not possible with just one person doing everything, right? Everything is a form of collaboration. All the stuff, many of the stuff that we do, even as teachers, is very collaborative. Okay. And then you have tolerance, curiosity, and creativity, which is why I said you'll find creativity. This resonates a lot with what Professor Teresa Ang mentioned a while ago. So that includes those are open-mindedness skills. The fourth one would be engaging with others, so being sociable, assertive, and energetic. Usually we think about this in terms of being extroverted, being able to connect with others, being able to say what we want to say, and being very energetic. And then the last thing, the fifth one is task performance. So that includes drive, motivation, that includes a sense of responsibility, being able to persist when difficulties are there. That includes being gritty, like we're not just surrendering to challenges. So that would be the this spirit of just striving and spirit of trying to work hard, and then self-control. And the last thing would be what we call compound skills. So this is not actually part of the five skills, but they call it compound because it's a blending of different types of skills. So that includes being able to think critically, being able to be metacognitive, so being able to understand the way why you think the way you think. So metacognition means thinking about your own thinking, and self-efficacy. This says that I can do it, that if you give me a task, let's say giving a presentation, creating social change for the common good, being able to do an exam, perform well in the exam, those are all related with self-efficacy. So these are the big five social emotional skills, and each of them can be divided into subcomponents. And if you look at these skills, you realize how important they are for daily life and professional life. For almost everything that we do requires using some, if not all of these skills at any one time, whether we're a university student, whether we're a social worker, whether we're a teacher, or whether we're working in an NGO or a company. All these skills are extremely important. And the other thing that I wanted to resonate with what Professor Teresa mentioned earlier is that now, with AI becoming more and more common, some people are fearing that their human jobs are in danger. But what research has shown from all over the world is that these skills become even more important. Okay? Because a lot of the routine tasks AI can do, like the things that are repetitive, the things that are not very creative, AI and the robots can do that very well. We don't need the humans to do all those things, including skills like driving, for example. If you have seen the driverless cars in California, you know that many skills could be replaced by AI, but these social emotional skills cannot be replaced. So a lot of them have shown that if professionals have these skills, they are less likely to be replaced. And these skills will only become ever more important in the AI age. Now, the other thing that I want to share is that these skills are not just residing within the individual. Most of the time, when we think of these skills, okay, this person is collaborative, that person has a high sense of motivation. So we think of these skills as residing within the person, but that is only half of the story. The other half of the story is that these skills are also a product of the environment and how the environment and the person interact together. So I want to highlight that it's not just a trait that the student has, but they are strongly shaped by the teaching and learning environments. And the metaphor that I'd like to use is like the seed being planted in a soil. So let's say I have a seed, a very good seed, but I plant it on the desert on the left side of the screen. No matter the goodness of that seed, if I plant it in a very dry soil, it will not grow, right? Because it's dry, no nutrients, it's not fertile. So even if I have a very good seed, even if I have very good traits, you say, like I'm trying to be resilient, I'm trying my best to be driven. If you plant me in a soil that is barren, dry, no nutrients, that seed will not grow. Conversely, if you try to plant that same seed on the soil on the right side of the picture, where it's fertile, where there's water, where there's a lot of nutrients, that seed can grow much more. So I think that this is a very good reminder to all of us that as much as we want to help the student or the person, we also need to be attentive to the broader environment where that person is embedded. Are we creating an environment that is good for their personal growth and development? And I think that is something that we need to be more conscious about as professionals and as students. So now I have tried to convince you that SEL is important. I've shown you that loneliness, well-being problems are severe. that we are facing huge well-being problems and that social emotional learning is important. So how can we actually support social emotional learning? What are the things that we can do? And to do that, I want to share with you some of the research that we have done on this topic. We have published on work across the globe, 71 countries, as well as in Hong Kong specifically. But I'll try to be less technical about it, but just brief you a little bit on the findings that we have. So to do this study, we used survey data from more than 500,000 students, to be exact, 522,836 15-year-old students across the globe from 71 countries all over the world. And that also includes data from Hong Kong. Actually, 7,000 Hong Kong students participated in this study. And we have data from Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, and New Territory. So this represents the whole of Hong Kong. In Macau, almost all the students, 15-year-old, participate because Macau is very small. So to get enough sample, they just surveyed everyone. In mainland China, that includes data from Beijing, Shanghai, Zhejiang, and Jiangsu province. Okay, these are just statistics. So if you go deeper into those 71 countries, you can see that we have data from Finland, France, Italy, etc., etc. Okay, so I'll skip those things. And in order to analyze the data, because you have 500,000 data, what did we have to do? We use machine learning. So I think all of you are familiar with AI now. So we also used a machine learning method to actually analyze this data. Now, I don't want to be technical, so the thing that I will use is this Netflix recommendation system. Netflix uses a machine learning approach to tell you what show should you watch next. So I just finished the latest season of Stranger Things 2 weeks ago. And so this my Netflix system now recommends things that I should watch because I watch Stranger Things. Now, some of you might be watching other things, and Netflix knows what you want to watch next. And they use machine learning to be able to recommend what you should be watching based on your previous watch history. The other metaphor that I'd use to help you conceptualize what machine learning is about is this person carving a marble statue. Okay. If you want to carve a marble sculpture, you cannot just do it in one go. The first carving that you do will be very rough and you cannot see the statue, the beautiful statue coming out. The first pass is always very rough. You have to do it again and again and again and again until you have a very beautiful statue that comes out to you. And that is similar to what we did here, this machine learning method that we use. The machine parse the data so that it can have a very accurate prediction. Because as I said, we had 522,000 students, so it was very difficult to just put everything into the picture. So I want you to look at these lists. Now, in our study, we had like more than 100 variables that we used to try to predict social emotional skills because we were thinking, what predicts social emotional skills? Is it your gender? Do males have better collaboration skills than females? Is it your family SES? If you come from a richer family, does that mean that you have higher, let's say, open-mindedness? Is it your country's economic development? If you come from Hong Kong, which is well developed, versus Papua New Guinea, does that mean that you have higher emotion regulation skills? Is it whether you're bullied or not? Is it your relationship with your parents? Is it how much the teachers were interested in you? Is it whether you feel that you have a sense of competence, etc.? So actually, we had more than 100 predictors here, but I just want you to think for a moment, maybe take 5 seconds to look at this list and pick your top three. If I were to ask you, what do you think are the top factors that would predict social emotional skills, engaging with others, open-mindedness, task performance, all those compound skills like self-efficacy, metacognition, what would they be? Okay. Now, when we first did the study, I didn't know what the results will be as well. So I was very curious. So that's why we fed everything into the machine. And these are the things that we found. Let's look at task performance first. So task performance, I think, would be the favorite social emotional skill. If you're a teacher or social worker, you want your students to be diligent, responsible, hardworking, persistent. That is task performance. So what you see here is that sense of belonging in school is the number one predictor. So students who feel that I belong in this school, I'm not an outsider. Students who have a very good relationship with their parents, and students of a high degree of social connectedness, which means they have good friends in the classroom, in the school. They are good relationships with their family. They have better levels of task performance. So they're the more responsible students. They're the more diligent. They are more persistent and hardworking. How about emotion regulation? So emotion regulation is being able to resist stress, being able to manage your emotions, right? And again, school belonging stands as number one. And the number two is relationship with parents. So students who have good relationships with their parents, they're more able to manage their emotions. How about engaging with others? So this is the things with leadership, being very assertive, being able to be, trying to be sociable, trying to engage with others. What would be the first factor? Again, it's school belonging. So the number one predictor is school, and the number two is social connectedness. So having friends, having good relationships with your family members, that seems to be the number two. And in terms of collaboration, again, school belonging comes out. If you want students to work well with others, if you want them to be empathetic, if you want them to be able to trust others, again, belonging stands number one, cooperation in the school, and the number three is social connectedness. So it seems the school belonging keeps coming up, and even with terms of open-mindedness, the last skill that we will explore. So open-mindedness includes creativity, which Professor Teresa mentioned a while ago. It also includes tolerance. It includes curiosity, so asking questions. Again, school belonging is number one. And then, of course, number two here is parents' education level. So more if you come from a more if your parents have a higher striving for your educational achievement, those students also become more curious. And then school cooperation, etc. Okay, so all those findings, I want to highlight a few key takeaways. The first one is that school belonging seems to be the number one predictor of all the five social emotional skills, whether it's being curious and open-mindedness, whether it's being able to regulate your emotions, whether it's being able to work with others, whether it's being responsible, diligent, etc. So what does that mean? School belonging means that if you are a student, you feel that you belong in your school. So let's say I come from COHK. So in COHK, we have a college system. So that's one of the ways we try to enhance school belonging, that I belong to a college. Let's say I'm from Chongchi College or I'm from United College, and I belong in this school. Or let's say if you're a student from EduHK, I think Professor Kenneth and Teresa were from EduHK. If I'm a student, do I feel that I belong in EduHK? Okay. And that can be go for your organization. Like if you're a member of Orbis or if you're a member of a high school, do you feel that you belong in that community? Or do you feel lonely and marginalized? If you feel that you belong, you will have better social emotional skills. The second thing is about social connectedness. So that means that you are very connected to your parents, if you have siblings, friends, classmates, teachers, and even your neighbors. So it seems that for social emotional skills to grow, social relationships are so important. And that's why I feel that a lot of the students right now are feeling lonely and having so many mental health challenges, probably because they don't have these social connections. They don't have this sense of belonging, and maybe they feel that there's no one they can talk to. They feel isolated, they feel lonely. Okay. And that is why, especially so for students with special educational needs, which Professor Kenneth Sin mentioned earlier, because these students, 11% of students in Hong Kong have SEN, he said, they are less likely to feel they belong because they feel they're different. They're also, even for people with visual impairment, which I think Orbis serves very well, these students are in danger of feeling that they don't belong and they don't connect well with others because they feel I'm different. So that is why it's even more urgent for us to try to build belonging and build connectedness for these types of students. And so what can we do as social workers, teachers, and even as university students? I think the first thing that we need to do is to try to be more mindful about the emotional environment. So environment is not just the physical space that we are in, but it's also the emotional environment. Are we fostering an environment where people feel they can belong, where people feel connected to each other? Are we building social relationships with our friends in the university or classmates in high school? with our colleagues and family members? How are we building the classroom climate? Is it a climate of fear and bullying, or is it a climate of connection and relationships? And all these things, if we're able to do them well, are able to build resilience, which means that we can bounce back and face the challenges in our lives. And I think with that, I want to end my presentation and say thank you to everyone for listening to that presentation.
Thank you, Professor King, for the sharing. It's so important, especially in the Hong Kong education climate.